The evening sun was soft and golden as Emma walked down the quiet street toward the karate dojo. Her steps were small but steady, her heart beating a little faster than usual. She held her old gym bag close, its strap worn from years of use. From the outside, she looked like any other woman, ordinary, gentle, calm. No one would have guessed she carried a story behind her quiet eyes. The sound of rhythmic shouts echoed from inside the dojo, students practicing their katas with power and pride. The moment she stepped up to the door, she paused. Through the glass, she could see a group of strong black belts moving in perfect harmony. Their white uniforms gleamed under the lights, and their sharp movements filled the room with energy. Emma took a deep breath. She wasn't sure if she belonged there, but something inside her whispered, "Just walk in." When she opened the door, the sound hit her, the thud of feet against mats, the sharp cry of focus, the quick turns of power. The smell of sweat and determination filled the air. A few heads turned when she entered. Some smiled politely. Others simply stared, curious about the quiet woman with the hesitant smile. Emma bowed gently, just like she remembered from the classes she had watched online. "Hello," she said softly to the instructor standing at the front. "I'm here to join the beginners class." The instructor, Master Collins, was a tall man in his late 40s, with years of experience written on his face. He looked at her kindly, but with a trace of doubt. "Have you trained before?" he asked. A little Emma replied, her voice calm. She didn't explain more, and he didn't ask further. He nodded and gestured toward the back of the room. "You can warm up there. We'll start soon." Emma placed her bag near the wall and knelt to tie her belt. It was a plain white one, freshly bought, the kind that showed you were starting from zero. She looked around. Everyone else had belts of color, yellow, green, brown, and most proudly, black. Their movements were strong, full of confidence. She could feel their eyes on her, some friendly, some questioning. One of the younger men whispered to his friend, "She doesn't look like she's done any training before." They both chuckled quietly, thinking she wouldn't hear. But Emma did. She just smiled to herself and stretched her arms. She wasn't there to prove anything. Not yet. The class began with simple movements, punches, blocks, and stances. Emma followed every motion with calm precision. She didn't rush, didn't show off, and didn't draw attention. Her form was clean, but she made it look natural, as if she were just learning. The black belts practiced nearby, their strikes cutting the air with power. Every time she moved, she could feel their glances measuring her. Unsure what to make of her calmness. Halfway through the session, one of the advanced students, Jake, noticed her again. He was tall, muscular, and clearly proud of his black belt. He leaned over to his friend and said with a grin, "She's gonna quit in a week. Look at her, too soft for this stuff." Master Collins clapped his hands, calling everyone to form a circle. "All right, let's welcome our new member, Emma," he said. "She'll be joining our beginner group." The group bowed, but Jake couldn't hide his smirk. Emma bowed back politely, pretending not to notice. She had learned long ago that silence was more powerful than reacting to small insults. When the practice resumed, Emma quietly copied the movements again, her focus sharp, her breathing steady. She moved gracefully, each motion flowing into the next. For a moment, she almost forgot she was being watched. She felt peace in her movements, the familiar rhythm of control and balance. She hadn't touched in years. But as the class went on, she could feel the weight of their doubt. Every whisper, every sideways glance reminded her of why she had stopped training before. People always saw her gentle nature and assumed weakness. They didn't know what life had already taught her, how strength sometimes hides in silence, and how patience can be sharper than a blade. As the class ended, Master Collins gave her a small nod. "Good effort," he said, though his tone carried polite uncertainty. "Keep practicing your basics. We'll see how you progress." Emma smiled. "Thank you, sir." She picked up her bag and bowed once more before leaving the mat. The students returned to their groups, some forgetting her already, others whispering again. But as she walked out, there was something in her eyes, a quiet fire that no one had noticed yet. Outside, the sky had turned deep orange. The wind brushed her face gently as she stepped into the cool air. For a moment, she stood still, closing her eyes and breathing deeply. The laughter and sounds from the dojo echoed faintly behind her, but she didn't mind. She wasn't hurt. She was patient, because Emma knew something they didn't. She had once fought in places where fear wasn't a feeling. It was a constant. She had faced opponents twice her size and still stood tall. She had learned to control her power, to move like water and strike like steel. But this wasn't the time to show it. Not yet. She smiled faintly to herself as she walked away. Tomorrow, she would return. She would train quietly, watch closely, and wait. Because sooner or later they would test her, and when that moment came, the simple woman they laughed at would show them exactly who she was. The next evening, Emma returned to the dojo. The sky was cloudy this time, the air a little colder. She walked with quiet confidence, her white uniform neatly folded and her belt tied carefully around her waist. The door creaked open, and again, all eyes turned toward her just like before. But this time, the stairs felt heavier. A few students whispered to each other as she stepped inside. Some gave polite nods, but others just stared. The kind of look people give when they've already decided what someone is capable of. To them, Emma still looked too gentle, too calm, too ordinary. She didn't fit the image of a fighter. She bowed to Master Collins, who nodded back with a small, professional smile. "You came back," he said, almost surprised. "Yes," Emma replied softly. "I said I would." "Good," he said. Consistency is important. The black belts were already warming up. Their voices were loud, full of energy. Emma found a quiet corner and started her stretches, ignoring the whispers around her. But she could feel the glances' eyes following her like shadows. Every small mistake, every slow motion seemed to earn a smirk or a whisper. Jake, the tall black belt from yesterday, was practicing near her. He noticed her again and couldn't resist a laugh. "Back for round 2. He asked loudly enough for others to hear. "Guess we didn't scare you off yet." Emma smiled faintly. "Not yet," she said calmly. Her voice was so soft it almost annoyed him. He wanted her to be nervous, to stumble or blush. But she just smiled and continued stretching. Her focus unshaken. When the class began, Master Collins paired students for drills. He looked around and said, "Jake, you'll work with Emma today. Help her with the basics." Jake raised his eyebrows in surprise. "Sure, Master," he said, though there was a hint of amusement in his tone. As he walked toward her, a few students exchanged grins, already expecting something funny to happen. Emma bowed respectfully before starting the drill. Jake didn't bow properly. He just smirked. "Ready?" he asked, with mock politeness. "Yes," she replied. They began with simple blocking exercises. Jake threw light punches, or at least they were supposed to be light. But each one came a little too fast, a little too strong. It wasn't meant to teach. It was meant to test her. Emma moved smoothly, her feet quiet on the mat. She blocked his strikes with precise timing, her face calm, her breathing steady. Jake frowned slightly. He tried another, faster, sharper. She dodged again. The other students started to notice. Some laughed quietly, others watched curiously. "Hey Jake, don't go easy on her." Someone called out. "I'm not," Jake replied, grinning, but deep inside. He was starting to feel something he hadn't expected: irritation. This woman wasn't reacting the way beginners usually did. No flinching, no panic, no confusion. Just quiet focus. "All right," he said with a grin. Let's try something harder. He stepped forward suddenly, pretending to throw a punch, but then sweeping his leg low, hoping to make her stumble. Emma shifted her weight instantly, her foot gliding back in perfect balance. His leg missed completely. The class chuckled, and Jake's grin faded for a moment. Emma didn't say a word. She didn't laugh, didn't gloat. She just reset her stance. Master Collins clapped his hands. Good control, he said to both of them. Remember technique, not ego. Jake nodded quickly, pretending he wasn't bothered. But his pride was stung. He'd underestimated her again, and it annoyed him. After the drill ended, Emma sat quietly near the wall to drink water. A few students passed by, still giving her curious looks. Some were less judgmental now. Others were just confused. Who was this woman who moved like a beginner but reacted like a pro? One of the younger students, Mia, came and sat beside her. You're really calm, she said shyly. Do you practice at home or something? Emma smiled. A little. I used to train before, really? You move like you've done this for years, Mia said. Surprised. Emma took a sip of water and nodded. Sometimes the body remembers even when the mind tries to forget. Mia didn't quite understand, but she nodded anyway. She could sense something deeper behind Emma's quiet words. As the class ended, Master Collins approached her. You're picking things up quickly, he said. You seem familiar with the basics. I've learned before, Emma admitted softly, but it's been a long time. He studied her for a moment. I see. Well, keep training. We'll test your skills properly soon. Emma bowed respectfully. Thank you, Master. Jake walked past her, wiping sweat from his face. You got lucky today, he said with a forced grin. Emma looked at him, her tone polite but firm. Luck has nothing to do with balance. He blinked, unsure how to reply, and just walked off. As the lights in the dojo dimmed and the class ended, Emma packed her bag quietly. Outside, the air was cool and smelled of rain. She looked up at the cloudy sky and smiled faintly. The world around her was noisy, full of judgment and pride, but inside, she felt calm. She knew she didn't need to prove herself to anyone. Not yet, but she also knew something the others didn't. The calm before a storm is the quietest moment of all, and soon. That storm was coming. The next few days passed quietly, but things inside the dojo began to change. Emma came every evening, always on time, always quiet. She bowed respectfully, warmed up alone, and trained with the same calm focus every time. But the whispers never stopped. The black belts had started to see her as a mystery, a simple woman who didn't talk much, didn't complain, but somehow didn't give up either. For some, that silence was strange. For others, it was funny. They couldn't understand why someone like her kept showing up. Jake, especially, couldn't let it go. Every time he saw Emma enter, he felt the same mixture of pride and annoyance. He'd been at the dojo for years, always praised, always noticed. But now, the quiet woman who barely spoke a word had become the one everyone was secretly watching. It started small, a few jokes here and there. Hey Emma, one of the students said during warm-up, you sure you're not here for yoga class? The others laughed. Emma smiled politely. No, she said softly. This is the right place. They laughed louder. She didn't respond. During partner drills, Jake made a show of it. Careful, Emma, he said in a teasing voice. Don't want to break a sweat. She looked at him calmly. I'll manage, she said, her tone even. He rolled his eyes. We'll see. The room filled with laughter again. Even Master Collins, though he didn't join in, didn't stop it either. Maybe he thought it was harmless, just friendly teasing. But for Emma, it wasn't about the words. It was the way they looked at her, like she didn't belong, like she was just pretending to be one of them. The next exercise was sparring light contact, just to practice control and reaction. When Master Collins called names, everyone paired up quickly. Emma ended up standing alone again. "Jake," the instructor said. "You're with Emma." Jake smirked. "All right, Master. I'll go easy on her." The class laughed again. Emma just bowed, her face calm. "Thank you," she said softly. They stepped onto the mat. The air around them felt different now, tighter, heavier. The others paused to watch, expecting something funny, maybe even embarrassing. "Ready?" Jake said with a grin. Emma nodded once. He began with light movements, testing her small jabs, soft kicks. She blocked each one smoothly, barely moving more than she had to. Her eyes followed every motion calmly, her breathing steady. The laughter from the others started to fade. Something about her stillness felt strange, controlled, focused. Jake tried a faster punch. She dodged it without blinking. He frowned, trying again, harder this time. She blocked, turned slightly, and his arm missed by an inch. He stepped back, confused for a moment. "You've done this before," he said, narrowing his eyes. Emma shook her head slightly. "I've practiced a little." The teasing tone in his voice disappeared. Now it was personal. He wanted to prove something. He lunged again, faster, stronger, but this time his balance slipped slightly. Emma didn't strike back. She simply moved aside, letting him fall forward. The movement was so natural it almost looked like a dance. The class burst into laughter, but not at her. At him. Jake's face turned red. He stood up quickly, brushing off the dust. "Lucky move," he said, sharply. Emma bowed again. "Maybe," she said. Master Collins stepped in. "That's enough," he said firmly. "Good control, both of you." But everyone had already seen what happened. The quiet woman who barely spoke had made one of their top students look foolish without even trying. After class, the whispers changed tone. Some laughed at Jake behind his back. Others started calling Emma the Silent Storm. She didn't like the nickname. She wasn't trying to be a storm. She was just trying to find her strength again, the strength she'd once lost, as she changed her shoes and packed her bag. Jake walked past her. "Don't get used to it," he muttered. "You just got lucky today." Emma looked up at him, her voice soft but firm. "Luck doesn't repeat itself," she said. He glared at her, but didn't reply. Outside, the night air was cool again. Emma walked slowly down the street, her bag over her shoulder. The sound of laughter still echoed in her mind, but she didn't feel angry. She felt something else focus. Every time they mocked her, it reminded her of what she'd learned long ago. People laugh at what they don't understand. They saw a quiet woman and thought that meant weakness. They didn't know that calmness could be sharper than anger, and silence could hide power. She looked up at the streetlights, her eyes steady. She wasn't there to fight them, not yet. But she knew something none of them did. Strength doesn't need to shout, and sooner or later, when the right moment came, she would stop being quiet, and when she did, the dojo would never forget it. The next week, the dojo felt different when Emma walked in. The usual laughter was still there, but quieter. The jokes were softer now, whispered only when they thought she couldn't hear. Some of the students were curious. They had seen how she moved, how she never lost her calm. Others still thought it was luck, a coincidence. But Emma didn't care. She wasn't there for them. She was there for herself to keep a promise she had made long ago. She bowed at the door and stepped onto the mat. The air smelled faintly of cleaning soap and sweat. The lights glowed white above her, and the sound of fists hitting pads echoed across the room. Master Collins was already there, giving instructions in his deep, calm voice. "Today," he said, "we focus on timing and reaction. Learn to read your opponent's energy, not just their movement." Emma listened closely. She understood those words better than anyone else in that room. When the warm-up ended, Master Collins began pairing students. "Jake," he said, "you'll demonstrate with Emma again." Jake smirked slightly, though he was more careful now. He still wanted to prove himself, but a small piece of doubt sat quietly inside him after last time. They bowed to each other. The dojo fell silent. Even the ones pretending not to watch couldn't help but glance in their direction. Master Collins explained the drill. Partner A throws a series of punches. Partner B focuses on defense. No attacking, just movement and control. Jake grinned. Got it? He faced Emma, bouncing lightly on his feet. Ready? Emma nodded once. Ready? Jake started slow. A simple punch, a second, then a third. Emma moved with quiet grace, blocking each one smoothly, her steps soft and balanced. Her breathing didn't change. Her eyes never left his shoulders, reading every motion before it came. He increased his speed. Still, she moved calm, precise, untouchable. The dojo began to quiet down. The sound of their movements echoed clearly now. Tap, step, block, step. Her body flowed. Like water, Jake's grin began to fade. He threw a faster punch, then faked a right hook, testing her. Emma didn't flinch. She tilted her head slightly and caught his wrist mid-air, her grip firm but controlled. In one subtle motion, she redirected his energy and stepped aside, letting his body move past her. He stumbled a little. The class gasped softly. She let go immediately, stepping back into stance. "Are you all right?" she asked politely. Jake blinked, nodding quickly, embarrassed. "Yeah, I'm fine." Master Collins, watching from the corner, raised his eyebrows. That move, the timing, the control, it wasn't something a beginner should know. "Good reflex," he said, hiding his curiosity behind a calm tone. "Continue." Jake tried again, now faster, stronger, a spark of frustration pushing him. His punches were quick, sharp, almost reckless. But Emma stayed light, floating on her feet. Every time he attacked, she moved just enough, no more, no less. Then, in one swift instant, she saw an opening. He had overextended. His arm hung just a little too far forward. She reacted without thinking. Her hand caught his wrist. Her shoulder turned. And in one motion, soft but perfect, she pulled him off balance and swept his leg gently from under him. Thud, Jake hit the mat before he even realized what had happened. The dojo fell completely silent. No one laughed this time. Emma stepped back quickly, her expression calm but her heart racing inside. She hadn't meant to throw him. It was instinct, muscle memory. The kind that only years of real training could build. Master Collins stepped forward slowly, his eyes on her. That, he said, wasn't beginner technique. Emma looked down, her voice quiet. "I'm sorry." It was a reflex. He studied her for a moment, then gave a small nod. A well-trained one. The other students whispered among themselves. Jake stood up, a mix of shock and pride flickering on his face. He looked at her differently now, not with mockery, but with something closer to respect. "Nice move," he said quietly, rubbing his shoulder. "Thank you." She replied softly. Class continued, but the energy had changed. The teasing stopped. The laughter turned into silence and curiosity. People watched Emma now, not as a joke, but as a puzzle they wanted to understand. When practice ended, Master Collins called her over. "You've trained before," he said, his tone calm but firm. "That much is clear." Emma hesitated, then nodded. "Yes. Years ago, what style?" "Krav Maga," she answered, her voice barely above a whisper. "And some Muay Thai." He nodded slowly. "You've got discipline." "But why start over from white belt?" Emma looked down for a moment. Because I needed to start over, she said simply. He didn't ask more. He just nodded again. Then start over well. When she left the dojo that night, the air outside felt lighter, cooler. She walked under the streetlights, her shadow long on the ground. Inside her chest, something had woken up, something she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't pride. It wasn't anger. It was focus, pure, sharp focus. The first spark had been lit, and once a fire starts, it doesn't go out easily. Emma smiled to herself as she walked home. The whispers, the jokes, the doubt, they didn't matter anymore. Because now, the dojo had seen a glimpse of who she truly was, and that was just the beginning. Asterisk the next evening. The dojo was buzzing with quiet excitement. Word had spread fast. The simple woman who joined just a week ago had taken down Jake, one of their strongest black belts, with a single, effortless move. No one said it out loud. But everyone wanted to see what would happen next. When Emma walked in, the usual laughter didn't follow her. The room fell into a strange silence. Even those who used to whisper now just watched. Her steps were calm as always, her uniform crisp, her face gentle. But her eyes, they were different. Focused. Still, Master Collins greeted her with a small nod. "Good to see you again, Emma." She bowed. "Good evening, Master." Jake was already on the mat, stretching. When their eyes met, he smiled, but it wasn't mocking this time. It was a quiet, respectful grin, the kind you give to someone you know can match you. The class began as usual, warm-ups, drills, control exercises. But tension was in the air. The other students kept glancing at Emma, waiting for something, waiting to see that calm fire again. Halfway through, Master Collins said, "We'll move to reaction sparring. Controlled speed. Focus on timing." Pairs formed quickly. Emma waited at the side until Collins looked her way. "Emma," he said, "you'll go with Jake again." Jake nodded. "All right." They both stepped forward. The room grew still. Even the sound of breathing seemed loud. "Bow," Master Collins ordered. They bowed. Then they took their stances. "Begin." Ache started carefully this time. No more teasing, no arrogance. He respected her now, and that made him stronger, sharper. His punches were clean, his movements smooth. Emma responded just as she had before. Silent, graceful, balanced. Every step she took was light, controlled, almost peaceful. She wasn't just reacting, she was reading him. Watching the small shifts in his shoulders, the tightening of his jaw. The way his weight moved from one leg to the other. She knew exactly when he would strike. And then, it happened. Jake feinted left. Then lunged forward with a sudden, powerful kick, fast and unexpected. The kind of move that could knock someone off balance if they weren't ready. But Emma was ready in a single, fluid motion. She sidestepped, caught his leg mid-air, and used his own momentum against him. Her body turned like a wave, her movement so fast it looked almost effortless. Jake hit the mat hard, thud. But before he could react, she had already stepped back in full stance, calm and composed. The dojo froze. Even Master Collins blinked. Taken aback, Jake lay there for a second, staring at the ceiling, breathless. Then he sat up slowly, rubbing his back and letting out a small laugh. What was that? Emma offered her hand to help him up. That, she said softly, was timing. He took her hand and stood. That was insane, he said, shaking his head, still smiling. You got me fair and square. The other students started murmuring, not with laughter this time, but with disbelief. They had never seen Jake taken down so quickly, so cleanly. Master Collins stepped closer, crossing his arms. Where did you learn to move like that? Emma hesitated. In another life, she said quietly, That answer only deepened the mystery. Class went on, but the energy had changed completely. The students moved differently now, more serious, more focused. They had seen something they couldn't explain. Emma wasn't just strong, she was disciplined, composed, and dangerously skilled. When the session ended, Master Collins called everyone to line up. They bowed together, as usual. But even the sound of that simple gesture felt heavier now, like respect had replaced pride as the others left. He turned to Emma. "You have real control," he said. "But you're holding back. Why?" Emma looked at the mat for a moment before answering. "Because I didn't come here to prove myself. I came here to remember who I was." Collins studied her face. There was no arrogance in her words, only truth. "Then," he said finally, "I think you're starting to remember." Outside, night had fallen. The street was quiet, with soft rain beginning to fall. Emma stepped out under the dim glow of the streetlight, feeling the cool drops on her face. She closed her eyes for a moment. For years, she had tried to hide that part of herself, the fighter, the survivor. But in that dojo, surrounded by disbelief and pride, something inside her had begun to wake up again. That moment, that perfect throw, wasn't just a move. It was a message. She was done being underestimated as she walked home in the rain. Her reflection shimmered in the puddles on the road. She smiled faintly, not because she was proud, but because she finally felt alive again. In her heart, she knew this was only the beginning. The real test hadn't come yet, but when it did, she would be ready. Asterisk rain poured softly outside the dojo the next evening, drumming gently against the roof. The air inside was cool, filled with a faint scent of wood and polish. The students stretched quietly before class, their chatter low and cautious. Something had changed in the dojo since Emma's last session. She wasn't the simple woman anymore. She was the one who moved like water and struck like thunder. Calm, silent, and powerful. When Emma entered, the door slid open with a small creak. Every head turned toward her, but no one spoke. She bowed respectfully, her face calm as always. Her wet hair clung to her forehead, and a small smile rested on her lips. "Evening, everyone," she said softly. "Evening, Emma," Master Collins replied. His tone almost warm this time. Jake gave her a small nod from the corner. "Didn't think you'd show up in this rain," he said. Emma smiled faintly. "Rain's just water. It doesn't scare me." Jake chuckled. Fair enough. Class began, but it wasn't just another class. There was tension, the kind that comes when everyone senses something important is about to happen. Master Collins decided to test his students that night. "Tonight," he announced, "we'll have controlled sparring matches. Technique and respect, not aggression. Let's see how far you've all come." Pairs formed quickly, excitement buzzing through the room. Emma stood quietly near the wall until Collins called her name. "Emma," he said, "you'll spar with me." The room went silent. Even Jake's eyes widened. The instructor rarely sparred with students and never with beginners. Emma blinked, surprised. "With you, Master?" He nodded. "You've been calm, disciplined, and careful. Let's see what you can do when challenged by someone your equal. Or maybe higher." Emma hesitated for a moment, then bowed. "Yes, Master." They stepped onto the mat. Everyone else stopped what they were doing. All eyes were on them. Collins took his stance, solid, confident, precise. He had decades of experience and absolute control. Emma mirrored him, her form quiet but perfectly balanced. "Begin." The room held its breath. Collins moved first, fast, steady, testing her defense. Emma moved lightly, blocking his strikes without force, letting his energy pass by her like wind through grass. Her focus was sharp, her eyes calm. Then he feinted left and came in with a swift palm strike. She caught his wrist instantly, not with strength, but with perfect timing. She stepped forward, twisted slightly, and before anyone could blink, the master was off balance. He stopped himself from falling. Just barely. The room gasped. Emma released his wrist and stepped back quickly, bowing her head. "I'm sorry, master." Colin straightened, his breathing steady but his eyes wide. "Don't be sorry," he said softly. That was beautiful. The dojo was silent. Then, for the first time, Master Collins smiled, not politely, but genuinely. "You've trained for years, haven't you?" Emma looked down. "Yes," she admitted quietly. He stepped closer. "Where?" Her eyes lifted slightly, her voice calm but filled with a weight that silenced the room. "I trained under Master Liang. In Bangkok?" Gasps spread through the students. Master Liang, a name that was almost legend in martial arts circles, known for brutal training and unmatched discipline. "You trained with Liang?" Collins asked, his tone filled with disbelief and respect. Emma nodded once. "For 6 years." Jake spoke up from the side, his voice softer than usual. "Then why start over? Why hide it?" Emma's gaze turned distant, as if she were looking back into another life. "Because I walked away," she said quietly. "After my brother died in a tournament, I couldn't fight anymore. Every punch reminded me of him. Every match felt hollow. I stopped training. I stopped everything." The dojo was silent. Even the sound of rain outside seemed to pause. She took a slow breath and continued. "But then one night, I was followed on my way home. I froze me, a fighter, frozen by fear. I realized I'd let my strength fade away. I promised myself that would never happen again. So I came here. Not to prove I'm strong, but to remember that I still am." Master Collins listened carefully. His expression softened. "You didn't need to tell us," he said gently, "but I'm glad you did." Jake stepped forward and bowed. "Emma, I'm sorry," he said. "For the jokes, the teasing. I didn't know." She smiled kindly. "You don't need to be sorry. You helped me remember why I came here." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Collins bowed deeply to her, the kind of bow a true martial artist gives only to someone worthy of it. "You honor this dojo," he said simply. Emma bowed back, her eyes glistening slightly. "Thank you, Master." That night, when the class ended, no one whispered anymore. No one smirked or stared. Every student bowed to Emma as they left, not out of fear, but out of deep respect. When she stepped outside, the rain had stopped. The clouds had parted just enough for the moon to shine faintly on the wet pavement. She looked up, took a deep breath, and smiled softly. For the first time in years, Emma felt peace, not from winning, but from accepting who she truly was. She had spent years hiding her strength out of pain. But now, the truth was out, not as pride, not as showmanship, but as quiet power. And in that silence, she realized something beautiful. Strength wasn't about fighting others. It was about remembering yourself, the morning after the storm. Sunlight spilled gently across the dojo floor. The mats glistened faintly, still shining from the cleaning that always happened before class. The air was peaceful, but beneath that calm was something new. Respect. When Emma stepped through the doors that day, the energy in the room shifted again. But this time, it wasn't doubt or curiosity. It was quiet admiration. Students turned toward her not to whisper or laugh, but to bow their heads slightly. Acknowledging her presence, Jake, who once teased her every chance he got, was already there, helping others warm up. When he saw her, he smiled genuinely this time. "Morning, Emma," he said. "Glad you came." She smiled back. "Morning, Jake." He paused for a second, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. "You know, you really opened our eyes yesterday." I've been training for years, but I've never seen someone move the way you do." Emma shook her head gently. "It's not about how long you train. It's about how deeply you understand why you're training." He nodded thoughtfully. Her words stayed with him longer than he expected. When class began, Master Collins stood in front of everyone with a serious expression. "Before we start," he said, "I want to acknowledge something. We often talk about strength, technique, and power. But yesterday, Emma reminded us of something greater: humility." The students looked at Emma. Their eyes filled with quiet admiration. "She came here with no ego," Collins continued. "She didn't demand attention, didn't show off, and didn't try to prove anything. Yet she demonstrated the heart of a true martial artist, calm, focused, and controlled. That's the kind of strength we all should aim for." The dojo filled with the soft sound of applause, not loud or forced, just honest. Emma bowed her head, her cheeks slightly pink. "Thank you, Master," she said humbly. When they began training, something beautiful happened. The students who once ignored her now asked for her help. "Emma, can you show me that footwork?" One asked. "How do you keep your balance like that?" Another said she helped each one patiently, explaining in her quiet, gentle way. "Don't fight the movement," she told them. "Flow with it." The body listens when the mind is calm. Even Jake started to ask for her advice, trying to copy her fluid movements. "You make it look easy," he said with a grin. Emma smiled. "It's not easy," she replied softly. "It's just peaceful." As the class went on, laughter returned to the dojo. Not mocking laughter, but warm, genuine laughter. The atmosphere was lighter, more connected. Everyone moved with more focus, more care. It was as if her presence had changed the energy of the entire room. During a short break, Master Collins walked over and stood beside her. For a moment, they both watched the others train in silence. "You've given them something I couldn't," he said quietly. Emma turned to him, surprised. "What do you mean?" "You reminded them that martial arts isn't about domination, it's about understanding. You've shown them that humility and power can live together." Emma smiled faintly. "Maybe they just needed to see it in a different form." He nodded. "You've earned their respect, Emma. Not by fighting harder, but by being real." She looked back at the students, all practicing, laughing, and bowing sincerely to each other, and her eyes softened. "Respect isn't given," she said softly. "It's grown. Like trust." When the class ended, something remarkable happened. Every student, one by one, came up to her and bowed. Not because Master Collins told them to, but because they wanted to. Jake was the last one to step forward. He smiled shyly and said, "You know, when you first walked in, I thought you were lost." Emma laughed softly. "Maybe I was. And now?" he asked. She looked around the dojo, where the mats gleamed under the evening light, and the students chatted with respect instead of pride. "Now," she said, "I think I'm home." Jake grinned and bowed again, this time lower. "Welcome home, then." Emma bowed back, smiling. "Thank you." As the sun set outside, golden light streamed through the high windows, reflecting off the mats and casting long, peaceful shadows. The sound of laughter mixed with the rhythmic slaps of practice strikes. In that moment, Emma realized something. She hadn't just regained her strength. She had earned something even more valuable. She had earned respect, not through power, but through peace. Not through fear, but through presence. Not through proving others wrong, but by quietly being right in her own way. As she packed her bag that evening, Master Collins called out softly, "Emma." She turned. He smiled. "From today, you're not a beginner here. You're part of the foundation." Her eyes warmed. "I'll do my best, Master. I know you will," he said, and as she stepped out into the fading light, The sound of the dojo behind her was no longer filled with doubt or mockery. It was filled with the steady heartbeat of unity. The woman they once called simple had become their silent inspiration. Asterisk. The sun was setting when Emma arrived at the dojo for what would be her last evening session of the month. The light outside was soft and golden, spilling through the wide glass windows and painting the wooden floor in shades of amber. The air smelled faintly of sweat, polish, and calm, a scent she had come to love. She placed her gym bag gently on the bench, her movements slow and thoughtful. For the first time in a long while, she felt complete. The dojo, once a place of tension and judgment, now felt like home. The laughter that echoed inside was no longer cruel. It was warm, friendly, real. As the class began, Master Collins gathered everyone together. "Tonight," he said, his tone deep and steady, "we don't train the body, we train the heart." The students bowed. Listening closely, he looked toward Emma. A few weeks ago, a quiet woman walked through these doors. We all saw her as fragile, unsure, and ordinary. But she taught us something priceless, that real strength doesn't shout, it listens. It doesn't rush, it waits. It doesn't seek attention, it earns respect through peace. Emma lowered her head slightly, humbled. Jake smiled from across the mat. "And sometimes," he added, "it throws you across the room without warning." Everyone laughed. Even Emma did softly, the kind of laugh that comes from peace rather than pride. The training that night was simple, slow, fluid drills that focused on control and breathing. As Emma moved, her body felt light, almost effortless. Every movement told a story of patience, loss, rediscovery, and quiet victory. She remembered her brother, his laughter during their childhood training sessions, his voice cheering her on in every competition. She remembered the day she walked away from fighting, promising herself she'd never return. And now, here she was, not fighting others, but finding herself again. After class, the students gathered around her one last time. Mia, the youngest in the group, spoke softly. "Emma, when I first saw you, I thought you were shy. But now I want to be just like you." Emma smiled gently. "Don't be like me," she said. "Be like you. The best version of yourself. That's the real fight, the one inside." Mia nodded, her eyes shining. Master Collins stepped forward, holding a small belt. Not black, not white, but brown, the color of grounded strength. "You've earned this," he said. "Not because of your skill, but because of your spirit." Emma bowed deeply. "Thank you, Master. But may I stay at white belt a little longer?" He looked surprised. "Why?" She smiled. "Because I'm still learning, not about fighting, but about peace." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Collins smiled too, his eyes full of pride. "That's the answer of a true martial artist." The class bowed together, their movements slow and respectful. It wasn't ceremony, it was gratitude. When everyone left, Emma stayed behind. She sat quietly on the mat, her palms resting on her knees, her breathing deep and calm. The room was silent now, except for the faint hum of the lights and the soft ticking of the clock. She looked up at the wall where the dojo's motto hung. "True strength is gentle." A small smile formed on her lips. For years, she had misunderstood that phrase. She had thought strength meant being unbreakable, untouchable, unbeatable. But now she knew the truth. Strength wasn't in the strike, it was in the stillness before it. It wasn't in shouting louder, it was in staying calm when the world tested you. It wasn't in fighting others, it was in fighting the parts of yourself that want to give up. She stood slowly, feeling the weight of her journey settle peacefully in her heart. As she turned off the lights, the dojo fell into soft darkness, but inside her, there was only light. Outside, the air was cool. The night sky stretched wide and quiet above her. She walked down the empty street with a calm smile, her steps steady, her heart full. People had once seen her as a simple woman. Now, she understood simplicity had always been her power, because real strength doesn't need to roar. Sometimes it only needs to whisper, "I'm still here." And with that thought, Emma disappeared into the peaceful night, her story no longer one of fear or doubt, but of rediscovery, a story that would be told again and again, inside that dojo for years to come. Asterisk weeks passed after that peaceful night, and the dojo had never been the same. The walls that once echoed with arrogance and laughter now carried something deeper: discipline, humility, and warmth. The story of the simple woman who silenced the dojo had quietly spread through town. But Emma never liked stories about herself. She still arrived early, still bowed at the door, and still trained as if she were starting all over again. To her, every day was just another chance to learn, not from the past, but from the moment itself. One afternoon, while she was practicing alone, a soft knock came at the dojo door. She looked up. A young woman stood there, hesitating, clutching her hands together nervously. "Hi," the girl said shyly. "Are you the woman who trains here?" Emma smiled gently. "Yes, come in." The girl stepped inside slowly, her shoes squeaking on the clean floor. "I've been watching from the window for days," she admitted. "I wanted to join, but I'm scared." Emma tilted her head. "Scared of what?" "Of being weak," the girl whispered. "Of looking stupid. People laugh when I try." For a moment, Emma saw a reflection of her younger self, the same fear, the same hesitation. She walked closer and said softly, "Then this is exactly where you belong." The girl blinked. "Here," Emma nodded. The dojo isn't a place for perfect people. It's a place for people who want to grow. The girl's eyes filled with hope. "Can you teach me?" Emma smiled kindly. "I can train with you. The rest, you'll teach yourself." From that day on, the girl, her name was Lily, began training with Emma every afternoon. Her punches were clumsy at first, her balance uneven. She tripped, fell, and even cried once when frustration hit too hard. But Emma never raised her voice, never frowned. She simply repeated, "Stand up. Try again. You're already stronger than yesterday." Slowly, Lily improved. Her steps grew steadier, her eyes sharper. But more importantly, she began to smile again. Other students noticed. They started coming earlier too, just to train beside Emma and Lily. The dojo became alive with energy, not competition, but connection. People helped each other. They laughed, encouraged, and cheered for small victories. One day, Master Collins watched from the corner, his arms crossed and a faint smile on his face. "You've changed this place, Emma," he said quietly. She turned, surprised. "I didn't do anything special, Master." He shook his head. "That's exactly it. You didn't try to lead. You simply were the kind of person others wanted to follow. That's real leadership." Emma bowed humbly. "Thank you. But I just wanted to share peace." "And you did," he said. "Now they'll carry it forward." As months passed, Emma's presence became a steady heartbeat of the dojo. People from other towns began to visit, drawn by the quiet legend of the woman who fought with silence and taught with kindness, but she never sought attention. When people asked her story, she only smiled and said, "It's not about me. It's about finding peace in motion." One evening, Lily asked her softly, "Sensei, why don't you teach in competitions? You could win easily." Emma chuckled lightly. "Winning isn't always a medal. Sometimes it's being able to look in the mirror and like who you see." Lily thought about that for a long time. That night, after everyone left, Emma stayed back alone. The dojo lights were dim, and the quiet hum of the city outside drifted through the paper walls. She knelt on the mat, bowed deeply, and whispered a small thank you to the space, to her brother's memory, to life itself. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like a fighter searching for purpose. She felt like a teacher, a guardian of peace. As she rose, a breeze slipped through the open door, brushing against her face. It carried the scent of night flowers and rain, fresh, new, alive. Emma smiled softly. The journey that began with whispers, mockery, and pain had led her here, not to an ending, but to a new beginning. She tied her white belt tightly around her waist, not because she needed to, but because it reminded her of something important. No matter how strong you become, there's always more to learn. And with that thought, she stepped forward onto the mat again, her feet steady, her heart quiet, her spirit unshakable. The dojo lights flickered softly behind her as she whispered to herself, "Every ending is just another beginning." For those who keep walking,